From the moment I walked off that craft, I had very clear memories. And I have had those clear memories for 20 years.
Clear memories of what happened on the craft, or just clear memories up to the point you've told us?
Both. Once I was on board the craft, I remember a great deal of what happened to me. I do not by any means remember the full 3 hours. I don't. And I don't know if I ever will or not, because up to this point, I mean, I have not had hypnosis done to recover memories. So that's a very important point for me to make to anyone watching, is that these memories have come from conscious memories. So in other words, I walked onto the craft, I had this encounter. It took me some time, but I did come to realize that it was a total of 3 hours, and it was very clear math that I did to work this out. So there was 3 hours of missing time, and I remember quite a bit of the information that they gave me at that time. There were things that have stayed with me so clearly that even as I'm looking at you, I can still see the images in my mind every time I hear about, you know.
Can you give us an idea what was conveyed to you at that time? And does that have something to do with what you're doing here now, visiting Sedona and Hopi land, the Four Corners area?
It has everything to do with it. 20 years ago, I was given messages, and these messages and information that I was given was so crystal clear to me that 2 days after I walked off the craft, I had a clear understanding of all of my psychic abilities and where they came from and how I had them and why I had them. I had a great understanding of my father that I've never had before in my life. I knew that he'd had contact. I had a clear understanding that there were many other people in the world that were like myself, and that all of these things were related. And after 2 days, I started writing quite a bit of this down. I did not by any means write it all down, but there were key points that I did put on paper. Now, at the time, even with some of them, I did not understand the full extent of what it was and this information. But it was about the Four Corners area as being, quote, one of the safe lands in what they termed the end times, if these end times came, in the form that they were giving warnings about. So they gave me warnings about possible futures in which the planet could potentially have destruction, and the people could potentially have a very difficult time. Now, these warnings were just possibilities, but they were things that they had made very clear to me, crystal clear to me, that humanity had a choice in whether or not we were going to end up on this destructive path or a positive path. So many of these things were told to me 20 years ago, but getting into it a little bit deeper, they also told me a great deal about the Four Corners area in particular. So, of course, I did not, at that time, as I was still trying to process all of this information, truly understand what it was that they were saying. How this particular area was a safe land, and how at this time there were certain people that would gather together in this area. The Four Corners area is a really important area to these beings, and it is because it is one of the center points on the earth where gatherings will take place for many people. And it does not necessarily mean that everyone needs to pack up and leave and go to the Four Corners area because it's a safe land. What it means is that even if an individual travels through the area, they are going to be able to have information coming to them within their own selves in order to assist them and help them to know where it is they need to be on the planet. If there is a great cataclysm that does take place, there are certain areas on the earth that will be in safe zones. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to go there and be taken care of. What it means is that these areas will not have that great destruction, but it still will be in chaos. So that needs to be clarified to everyone, and that there are these particular safe spots and safe lands all over the earth. Now, the indigenous people all over the earth have known these things for thousands of years, and they are the ones that have all of this knowledge as to where all of these particular areas are. And if we take a look at their myth stories, we are going to be able to find that information. And at the same time, this has been guarded by them for thousands of years, so that if we needed the information, it would be made public for everyone. So it's really important. The Hopi, as well as others on the planet, play a part in this. Now, there needs to be some very clear understanding here about what I'm going to say, because I do have friends that are in Hopi, and I have talked to people there, but by no means at all am I a spokesperson for them, do I speak on their behalf whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my experience with you. I'm not going to talk about Hopi. I'm going to share my experiences that revolve around them.
Maybe you can tell us where the link-up came. You were told by these beings in 1988, somehow. I assume this is when you were also told to come to Hopi at some point. There was also some kind of a, I don't know if it was a stone or a necklace or something that you had and you buried in your backyard. Do you want to share that story before we kind of move into the bigger picture?
Yes. The relationship between these beings and the Hopi, for example, again, this is only from my experiences, and it's fascinating. Even to me, it's fascinating. When I was on board the craft, I was sitting in what I call a light chair, and it was, you could look at it just like this, except instead of it being a chair, it was made from pure light. So it almost glowed. And I sat in this chair, and I looked across the room, and I had a being on either side of me. And a screen popped up, and the screen was actually quite large. It was probably about this, quite as large as the chair, and 2 or 3 feet high. And as I looked at the screen, there was information that came across it, and images. And these images would be accompanied by information that was given to me by these beings, either through telepathy, or meaning they would directly speak to me, or it felt like they were just, there was a constant flow of information being sort of placed within my mind. Now, one of the things that they shared with me was the creation of man. And this is very much related to the Hopi and all of the indigenous people and ourselves. So, to make this story really short, they explained that they had a hand in creating mankind, but by no means were they God. That they were the helpers of this earth to ensure that that they were overseers, so that they would be here to watch over the earth, to help man become more than what they currently are. So, in the beginning, life was created, but nothing came of it. So it's like saying that they threw the seeds of life across the land just to see what would come up. And the idea was that that a vessel would be made so that the sparks of life, us, could then enter and experience life in this world. But nothing ever came of it. In the second world, they gave this life more form, but still thought that it would evolve into something more. And again, nothing of any real value was produced. In the third world that they created, and again, these are the things that were shown and told to me.